All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Feed Importer webinar. As I mentioned before, everyone is going to be muted for the duration of the presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please put those in the chat. We will answer all questions at the end of the webinar. My name is Molly Burns. I'm the Branded Program Director for Food Export Midwest and Food Export Northeast. I'm really excited to spend the next hour and a half with you today, telling you a bit more about food export and our services, and also sharing a great presentation from Kathy Bandick. That's our agenda for today. I'll kick it off with an overview of food export and our programs. We really feel that for you, our importers and traders in the European Union, that many of our programs are very beneficial to what you do, and we're excited to tell you more. After that, Kathy Bandick will present on the U.S. feed industry today, and we'll end with questions and answers. So to kick off, I'm going to spend a couple slides talking about how food export can be of support to your business. First up, I want to describe the mission of food export. Our goal is to empower U.S. small and medium-sized businesses in our regions to help them sell their agricultural products internationally. We are nonprofit trade organizations, and we're at an interesting intersection where the majority of our funding comes from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, specifically from the Foreign Agricultural Service. Our members, however, are from the state departments of agriculture, so the Illinois Department of Agriculture, for instance. This allows us to harness U.S. federal and state resources to support U.S. companies looking to sell their export and agricultural products internationally. We tend to focus on products that have a value-added component rather than a bulk soybean or a bulk commodity. We also tend to focus on companies that are small and medium-sized, so typically less than 500 employees. We have three pillars to how we support the U.S. businesses to connect with you and sell in your markets. First, we help companies become export ready through a series of exporter education. We have a lot of free webinars and seminars, all helping to make the U.S. businesses ready to export. After that, we have our market entry services. This is where we introduce U.S. suppliers to businesses like you. We can do this in a number of ways, from an online interaction over email all the way to bringing suppliers to your market. Finally, we have our market promotion services. We'll cover this in greater detail towards the end. It's mostly surrounding our reimbursement program for export marketing expenses. Food export represents companies in the red and blue states on this slide. We focus specifically on the Midwest and Northeast regions. We have partner agencies that cover the other states, the ones in gray. So if you are representing a supplier that works in a different state, let us know. We can help make introductions to our peers in the other groups. As I mentioned, we tend to work with U.S. businesses that are small and medium-sized. They all are headquartered within the United States, and they have to have at least, their products must have at least 50% U.S. agricultural origin. Many of them are labeled as products of the USA. One thing we focus on is encouraging the businesses from their executive level all the way to the accounting and sales staff, that all staff are willing and excited to fund and support their export promotions. We really feel that from the top to the bottom of a company, the best way to succeed is to have everyone on board with the idea. I want to take a minute to highlight the Midwest region in particular, which is where the majority of the companies in our animal feed industry are located. The Midwest, known as the Heartland of America, is one of the world's largest feed producing regions. It's an area, because we have such volume for soybeans, corn, and other commodities, we see a lot of innovation around animal feed ingredients, additives, and supplements. There's many modern production methods that are developed in this region. Most businesses have a research and development department that's constantly working to develop new technologies and ingredients for your business. This region is a leading supplier of the ingredients we're going to discuss today, a lot of raw materials and additives. This is mainly because this area is the largest producer for the dairy, beef, swine, and poultry industries. And so a lot of local businesses support those industries with their ingredients. We have a lot of trade shows in our region that cover this ground as well, such as the World Pork Expo and the World Dairy Expo. This list includes some of the products that we support in helping to sell them internationally. We work with many companies who can sell animal feed ingredients. We'll get into this in greater detail in a moment, but all of these businesses are in our database, and so we'd love to make any introductions or send out a trade lead if you're interested in importing a new product. A big reason that we exist is because we have a network of in-market representatives who support us internationally. These 20 or so representatives are our boots on the ground in foreign markets. They help keep up our network and making sure that we're connecting with you, our trade. They also help us to put on events and activities in your market. We have a representative from our European in-market rep on the call today. His name is Jens Ombach, and he's the managing director of MK2. He's a local expert. He's worked with us, Jens, you can say this better than me, but at least 10 to 15 years. He can help with a lot of different support needs you may have as you work with U.S. agricultural products. He can help you identify new products that could be in demand for your market. He can help coordinate meetings with suppliers who have those products. And then he can support any questions around promoting those products and furthering your reach. Jens in particular helps support a lot of programs that we offer for you, our trade, importers, and traders. Like I mentioned, he can help find the products and introduce you to U.S. suppliers. He also is our main contact as we offer feed industry intelligence from the U.S. To that end, we have a newsletter that goes out 3 times a year called U.S. Feed Link. This newsletter covers top trends in the U.S. feed industry. It also highlights some of our states that focus on this type of product and many suppliers who have new products to share with you. If you don't currently receive this newsletter, please contact Jens or put a comment in the chat. We'll make sure to add you to the mailing list. Jens, I think you wanted to speak to our Buyer's Mission Program and Trade Lead System in particular. Can I pass it to you to discuss this?
Yes, thank you very much, Molly, and hello everybody, and thanks for joining us. Some I know personally, others at least have received a bunch of emails regarding this particular activity from me. But as Molly already introduced, I'm taking care of the European market for the Food Export Program. And I just wanted to highlight 2 services that we provide and offer to European companies. Some of you already use those services or participated in a buyer's mission, but just basically a general call out to be aware of these and to take advantage of these. First of line, all our services are free of charge for you, so you can use all our program activities to enhance your business with the United States. The core program is the buyer's missions that we organize. There are 3 throughout the year. It's to the IPPE mission, the World Dairy Expo, and the World Pork Expo. The main idea is that we bring international importers, wholesalers, or buyers in general to these trade shows in the United States. We organize plant visits, we organize one-to-one meetings with American suppliers, just to generally get you in contact with potential partners and help you grow your business. A far less logistically complicated way to do that is the trade lead system. So as Molly mentioned, we have a huge database of feed and feed ingredients producers in our area. And if you are looking for a specific product, for a specific commodity category, or even one particular company, you can just send me over an email. We run it through our system, and we would either send you a list of potential partners or the contact for one specific partner that you might looking for. Usually that takes just 2 or 3 days. So whenever you're looking for anything from the United States, feed related or pet food and food ingredients related, depending on your type of business, feel free to reach out anytime. We look into it and hopefully find the right matching partners for you. And then on the next slide, Molly, if you won't mind skipping one ahead, we got comparable to the buyer's missions. We also organize kind of reverse buyer's mission or trade missions. In this case, we will run a trade mission to Bulgaria in the last week of April next year. For this one, we bring in a delegation of American feed companies interested in exporting and exploring the European market. And it will be a 2-day event. We obviously will send out individual invitations afterwards. But if you're interested in attending, please let us know. We also got a reimbursement program for travel costs. For example, if you fly in from Bulgaria, flying from Turkey or the Netherlands, we would compensate you for flight and accommodation costs and enable you to join this event from our end. I will do a follow-up email with some more details on it, probably early next week. You can review and get back to me with any questions on that. And the last slide is basically summarizing all of it at one glance, talking about the buyer's missions, about the trade lead system. And then what we also do, we support American feed companies at exhibitions around the globe. So depending on which trade show you're visiting for the feed industry, feel free to reach out, and it's going to be either me for European-based shows or my colleagues overseas. And they can give you a list of the US companies that are be at the show, facilitate meetings, organize them for you, send you the company profiles to get you a better overview of which American suppliers you might meet at those international trade shows. So yeah, general just call to action. Feel free to reach out anytime. We are here to help whenever you're looking for something from the United States. So with that, thank you very much. Turn it back to Molly and enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, Jens. All right, we'll end with an overview of our branded program, which is a reimbursement program for marketing expenses of US products in your country. The program reimburses at 50% for specific marketing and promotional activities, and these costs can be incurred both by the US supplier and also by you, their importer. The US businesses do need to meet certain eligibility requirements, such as qualifying as a small business, and their products must have at least 50% US agricultural content. But it can be a great resource for you to further the reach of your product as you're selling it in your market. There are a variety of different expenses that are eligible for the branded program and for reimbursement. They all fall under the umbrella of marketing and promotional expenses. This can be anything from exhibiting at a trade show, such as Eurotier. We also do a lot of support around packaging and labeling, a lot of digital marketing and online work, and all the way down to the US supplier getting reimbursed for shipping a sample to you. I have some photos on the next few slides to showcase how other businesses have used this program to conduct marketing internationally. This is a trade show booth that a US business called Great Lakes Biosystems put on in China. They were able to get reimbursed for a lot of costs, such as the booth itself, their signage that's in the background, the table rental, any electrical work, and more. This is one of our most popular expenses, and we reimburse for lots of trade shows every year. Another popular expense is cost to change your package and labeling to be able to sell within your market. This is a business called Transagra, which is located in Iowa. They needed to create new labels for their packaging to sell to the Egyptian market. So you can see that they have new labels here on this slide. We can reimburse for the cost to create a new sticker, to do any translation work or regulatory compliance checks. We also can help with the cost to print the stickers, which is the most expensive cost by far. We help out with stickers or with bags, whatever costs come up as you need to change the label for your products. In the online space, there are many eligible expenses. For animal feed ingredient companies, a common expense is to update their website. Often they'll add the ability to have multiple languages on their website, and we can reimburse the cost to make that happen. This helps to target an international audience and promote their product overseas. Go ahead and mute here. There we go. There's other online advertisements that are eligible. We've supported costs such as search engine optimization, Facebook ads or Instagram ads, any costs for social media management. Another common expense is an advertisement on a European magazine's website. We'll often do banner advertisements or email advertisements that have a special section about the product at the end. Many point of sale materials are also eligible. So you can see a few examples here. There's a lot of brochures and marketing pieces that we've helped put together. This cost can be incurred and developed by the U.S. business on your behalf, or you can print and create your own brochures and marketing materials and get reimbursed through Food Export after the fact. We also help support advertisements in magazines and periodicals. You can see a couple ads here. AmAffirm did an article in an Indian publication, and then on the right is a European publication that we also supported for that company. A fun expense we see often are giveaway items or little promotional materials to give away. Often these come in conjunction with a trade show internationally. You can see a few examples here, such as keychains, t-shirts, and bags. In the pandemic, we helped reimburse for a lot of face masks, so we like to keep that in the slide. One thing you'll see is that any promotional item we reimburse for needs to say made in the USA or a similar statement indicating the US origin of the product. We are a program that's federally funded, and a major goal of ours is to promote the US origin of the product. So any marketing or promotion activity you put on needs to showcase that the product is from the United States. In order to participate in the program, it acts like a reimbursement program. So you and your US supplier will apply to the program before paying for your expenses. Once you're approved, you can go ahead and put on your marketing activities, such as purchasing and going to your trade show or buying space in your local magazine. After the fact, you'll submit a reimbursement request on our website. We'll review the expense and reimburse for the eligible costs at 50%. As I mentioned before, any promotional item we reimburse needs to say something like product of the USA, grown in the USA, and somehow promote the US origin of the product. We run the program every year on a calendar basis. So we're looking for any interested businesses to contact your US supplier and have them apply to the program for next year by the end of this year. The applications are accepted on a rolling basis through next year, but we really encourage you to apply before the year even starts. The application fee does increase after December 31st, so that's another incentive to apply before the year begins. All marketing expenses need to take place within the program year, so January through December. After that, companies have up to 2 months after the year ends to submit their reimbursement requests. We really recommend getting any reimbursement requests in as soon as the activity ends. So the day you get back from a trade show or the day you publish your magazine ad, submit the request on our website. We'd like to get started early and make sure everyone gets their money back as soon as possible. The Brainerd program has a lot of ins and outs, a lot of details, so we've developed an importer guide to help support any questions or just support you as you're pursuing the program. You can get this manual in a variety of different languages, and it's located on our website. I'll put the link in the chat so you can access it, but feel free to contact Jens afterwards if you'd like a copy. I want to end our overview of food export services with this slide. It's all meant to showcase how we can support you with these services. Are you looking to meet new U.S. suppliers or bring new types of U.S. products to your market? Do you need help meeting those suppliers? Or perhaps you're already selling some U.S. products and you'd like to get reimbursed for your marketing efforts. That can help you with the marketing you're currently doing or to take on new marketing activities throughout the year. If any of that is applicable, please reach out to us. We absolutely want to work with you and your U.S. supplier to increase your market share and to support your business. With that, I am going to pass to the next section of our presentation, which is a special presentation from Kathy Bandick. She is the Technical Development Manager for Innovad Group. She provides technical support for customers, sales, marketing, and business development. Her broad background includes livestock production, academia, consulting work, and over 25 years in various roles in the U.S. feed industry. Throughout, she has been actively involved with industry, scientific, and producer organizations. Dr. Bandick holds a PhD in ruminant nutrition and an MS in swine nutrition and management. Kathy, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it to you.
Great. Can everybody see? Are we ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me speak to you today. I'm glad we have a number of people participating. As Molly said, I've been in the feed industry for a long time and like to share that with others so that we can find ways to mutually grow and advance together. Within my presentation today, I'm going to just start out with a general discussion of the U.S. feed industry structure. I think that would be just really helpful, especially for those of you that may have not been heavily involved in purchasing from U.S. companies. And then, you know, how those different entities differentiate themselves from each other. Again, things that would be important for you to consider when deciding who you might want to do business with. Across that, there are certain topics that are really kind of top of mind right now in the feed industry, and we'll touch a little bit on what I see those as being. And then we'll go on into a couple slides on byproducts as being a little different from just regular commodities, and then spend a number of slides going through additives, why we use them, how we use them, what's available, because that really is a very powerful and primary way that the industry differentiates, brings value, provides solutions. And so we'll touch on that, certainly not get into great depth. And then finally kind of wrap up with some maybe discussion thoughts about making those farm level decisions about feed choices and additive choices that again would come into play as you decide what you're offering to those customers. So just to kind of start out, I've got a couple of these that are graphics that were put together by the American Feed Industry Association. The feed industry in the U.S., if you look in the little blue box there, the domestic consumption of animal feed is 284 million tons. And most of that goes to beef cattle, broilers, hogs, but we have other industries as well, certainly dairy. There are about 900 feed manufacturing facilities or related companies that are actually participating in some of the certification programs offered by AFIA, and we would feel that that represents a large portion of the industry members. About 75% of all that feed that's made is kind of coming from what this graphic's calling staple ingredients. In other words, the large volume commodities and byproducts. And just as a point of interest, I guess, the three states in the U.S. that utilize, have animals consuming the most feed would be Iowa, Texas, and California. But then if we look internationally, which is our focus today, food and feed exports, animal food and feed exports from the U.S. Have been rapidly expanding. So here we can make comparisons between 2022 and 23, and the volume went up more than doubled, 120%, while the value increase associated with that was almost an 80% jump. And as far as a scope, we're talking about 13.4 billion US dollars is in terms of a value of U.S. animal food exports, and that represents almost 20 million metric tons. Top 5 by value, not that that should feel that it would restrict you in any way to meeting your needs, but certainly corn co-products are right up there, very high, driven in large part by the growth of the ethanol industry. Pet food, various animal feed preparations, and then forages, and then enzymes. So while that's a very small volume, a very large dollar amount. So if we talk about the different types of businesses that make up the U.S. feed industry, I thought about this quite a bit, and I broke it down into these 4 broad categories. Certainly we have a lot of additive suppliers, and those may be U.S. companies which manufacture, blend, and distribute their own proprietary additives. And then, within industry, there are also U.S. divisions of many international companies. When I talk about supplement manufacturers, that's really a little broader than just supplements, depending on how you would define those. But here I'm thinking of companies that make specific combinations, blends, multi-ingredient products that are then added into a larger ration. They tend to be a small portion of the animal's total diet. We use the term supplement here usually to mean a fairly small amount. Maybe the term premix for something that's a little larger volume, but in both cases would be adding that to commodities or co-products to create the final diet. They're going to deliver macronutrients. They're going to deliver trace nutrients such as minerals and vitamins, and often additives. And they can come in different forms. We often think of dry blends, sold in bulk, sold in bags, pelleted feeds or extruded. We have liquid supplements, and then what we term tubs and blocks, which are made out of originally largely liquid ingredients. Lots of molasses is used in this industry, and then they're either chemically or by pressure or cooking, solidified, and then fed free choice to animals. Then we have the commodity suppliers. Someone's got to provide that large bulk portion of the diet. They may deal in grains, co-products, specialty ingredients, perhaps they're associated with a certain industry that has a co-stream that they tie into, or forages. And these entities typically do bulk sales. They may blend some ingredients together, still in bulk, so not really making finished feed per se, but a little more than just commodity brokers. And then they're going to vary in the level of logistics they provide in terms of supplying these high volume ingredients. And then we finally get to what you would maybe term a feed manufacturer. They're going to source all these previous portions of the diet and put them together into a final feed product. This part of the industry has businesses that are very, very diversified. They're going to range widely in size, in their capabilities, in the livestock classes served. They may make feed for virtually all classes of livestock. They may focus on just one, or pets, or aqua. What services they offer. Are they just providing feed, or are there other support services that are offered to their customers? What registrations they have, what certifications they may have, so that their products can go into various marketing type programs, natural, organic, those sorts of things, or to certify how animals are raised or how the feed is made. Many will have proprietary brand lines, and they'll vary in what additive options they offer. Well, again, we'll talk a little bit more about how they use that to add value. Some will do toll manufacturing, to where they will make blends, products that meet another company's specifications and put that customer company's branding on it. And they're going to vary quite a bit in business structure. We have private businesses, large businesses, corporations, cooperatives. So as you're learning who you might want to deal with, these are some of the things you'd want to differentiate them on and see what fits your needs best. So how do they, across all of this diversity, set themselves apart? Well, where they source their ingredients. In some cases, what matters most is that they're very good at least costing their ingredient supply. It may be that they have a story behind their ingredients that would be of value to their customers. So those things vary. They're going to vary in which quality assurance and quality control programs and certifications that back them up. Again, is that of value to you and in doing your business and to your customers? What supporting research and data they have, how much they sponsor on their own. Logistical capabilities, how much, what scope and size do they typically handle? What can they have in inventory at a given time and where? How they deliver, and then their expertise at this point in time with exports. Their willingness to toll manufacture if you're looking for a branded product. And then I touched on this earlier, those associated services. And those may be directed for their feed company customers, or they may be directed to the producers, the end user of the feed. But it can come in the form of technical expertise, testing, maintaining databases that information can be pulled out of, or comparing baselines, and then record keeping. Also, they're obviously going to vary in their nutritional formulations and the specifications and guarantees of their individual products. Ingredient synergisms, are they offering things that are combined together that bring some special value. And then we get into the beef and dairy animals. When we need rumen protection technology, that is something that manufacturing companies certainly differ in and identify themselves around. And finally, what additives they have available to include. And a really important one at the end of the day is the people. And I don't have to tell you that when you're looking at an entity to do business to business relationships with, you need people that understand what you want and that y'all get along and communicate well. So there's the industry. So what are the people in that industry talking about right now? And I just pulled out a few broad areas that, a lot of discussion about, a lot of articles about, research ongoing, to keep making advances in precision feeding. And that's, for two reasons. We want to help the animals do as well as they can with the least wastage of nutrients feed from an economic standpoint, but also to reduce waste from a sustainability side. I've got a couple stars by sustainability. Currently, there's not quite as much government level emphasis in this here in the US as there may have been a few years ago, but we all know that in business, it's consumers and customers that drive where investments are made and what needs to be provided with products. And it's well recognized that that sustainability story and the facts behind it are valuable to many. And so that continues to be an emphasis. Microbiomes, and I have that plural, those of us that work with ruminant animals always talk about the rumen microbe, but certainly continuing interest and new discoveries every day into the importance of and ways to manage actually the microbiomes in the lower gut and even in the lungs and the reproductive system, in the liver. So that is definitely an area of extreme interest. We continue to talk and learn about stress and the various stressors. And from the feed side, a lot of emphasis on feeds, additives, and feeding management that impact inflammation, oxidative damage, and immune responses. And then tying that all together, there's some fascinating work out there helping us better grasp how all these things talk to each other, communicate with each other, and impact the overall metabolism and performance of the animal. Following along on that, there certainly is growing interest in understanding the mode of action of feeding programs and additive usage, not just those performance outcomes, just to help us do a better job of management. I touched on the sustainability. One of the things that we really talk about a lot here are how many of the ingredients used in feed are co-products. People sometimes, as I'm sure you know, get concerned that we're feeding people food to animals, but we're talking about many, many tons, millions of tons of materials that we keep out of landfills and instead upcycle into valuable proteins and other nutrients. And to top that off, science and management continue to advance and advance. And so, an example that I'll often talk about as a ruminant nutritionist You know, our dairy cows here in the US are averaging 40% less feed to make 100 pounds of milk than they did 40 years ago. That's a pretty big jump in efficiency and therefore sustainability. So these things are important to the feed industry. And if they're important to your customers, US suppliers are going to be tuned into this. So we go on and talk a little bit about those byproducts or co-products, whichever term you prefer, as feed ingredients, as things that may be exported. One thing we need to keep in mind that's what they are. They're byproducts. They are not a primary concern for the sourcing industry, although there are some, and I would say the ethanol producers are an example where they're really growing in their understanding of the value in paying a little more attention to those byproducts so that they're more valuable to the people that are buying them. Not surprisingly, we'll find a lot of difference in sources, and those differences can affect the composition and quality of those products if we're considering them as feedstuffs. And that's because all of these plants, whatever it is they're making, are going to have their own processes, their own equipment. Sometimes the raw materials change or are different between companies. So when you're looking at these is something you may purchase and use yourself, you know, is just common sense. Ask questions, conduct testing or have them conduct testing and provide data. Define the specifications of what you want. And usually, you know, it's advisable to use a limited number of sources to reduce variability. And the big thing we're worried about is, again, that composition. And one of the things that really changes not just between sources, but changes over time as these industries have advancements is what all has changed in the steps between your raw material, for example, corn, and your byproduct, something like distiller's grains. We know that the source industry is pulling something out of it to use. And so that's not there anymore. And again, a simple example is the ethanol. So that starch is gone. Well, that means we have now increased the concentration of everything else, whether those are nutrients or contaminants. And as those industry efficiencies and processes change, those values change as well. So we think about kind of I've got byproduct buzz here, what people are talking about. I will start out by saying this is not an area I am an expert in, but being in the industry, I read, I go to meetings, things I've heard recent speakers say or articles report. The first one should be no surprise to anyone. Tariffs will impact trade demand, domestic use, and price. We don't know how, so don't ask me that question. It looks like in the near term, U.S. soybean meal and soy hulls will be in plentiful supply. The industry is getting more efficient in getting the soy oil, you know, the primary product, or it was when we first started growing soybeans, out of that crop, which means soybean meal and other byproducts will have less oil in them. That could be positive, you know, but it's different. Citrus production continues to plummet. We have a disease in our trees here, citrus greening, that is decimating the U.S. citrus industry. Just recently went down another 28%. So there's, you know, valuable co-products for the feed industry that have historically come out of there, mostly citrus pulp. Availability of that is way down. So people are finding substitutes for that. And again, the ethanol production processes, and then that fractioning out other things they can sell out of what's left after making the ethanol, that all continues to evolve. And so your distiller's grains continue to change. Here's one example, right? So they're enhancing and quantifying the value of a range of co-products. And so one company has come up with something, there's been just a little research on it. And they're trying then to brand their co-product. And they've got one where the crude protein content of what's basically distillers grains and solubles is up to 50%. Well, that fits into feed differently than what was being made 20 years ago. And then they are concentrating some of the beneficial components that are found in distiller solubles, most notably yeast and metabolites, getting rid of some of the water and some of the other things that they're not as interested in or that are not necessarily beneficial before they add them back. This is just one example. But to give you an idea, sometimes it's best to see something finite. So, excuse me. These pauses are all getting a drink. So additives, I've mentioned several times. Where do they fit in the picture? For a producer, what's the answer to their question, why? And obviously for them, it needs to involve economics. Well, there are additives that have been shown to improve performance, to support animal health, improve efficiency, reduce environmental impact, or address specific problems. Pretty broad and kind of covers the gamut of what producers are looking for or worried about. But these are valuable tools in all these areas. For top producers, those that are doing quite a few things right, additives can be that next step to get their extra boost in performance. And I hate to say it, but those that aren't necessarily up where they could be often look to additives as sort of a bandage to address whatever they perceive as one of their biggest or the biggest issue they're dealing with. So, different people use them for different reasons. Now, if you are producing and selling feed, why are you considering using additives? Well, certainly they add value to the product you're selling because it can help meet the desire of a customer for a specific solution or prevention, helps you differentiate from your competitors. It may give you new messaging, something different to talk about when you're talking to prospective customers. May help with a progressive image if you're putting something out there that's, fairly new on the market, newly researched. And there are things that may help you reach new markets or seasons. In my history, we started adding a fly control product to a supplement at a time of year when we didn't really need a lot of supplemental nutrition. And so that, again, helped stretch the time of year that cattle producers needed something that my company had. So how do we take additives to market? Just four really broad ways. Sometimes they're used as a branded product feature. There's a line of product and it has this blend of mineral in it, or it has, some other additive or combination of additives that fits, say, a premier line, a premium line of feed. Some manufacturers sort of have a menu, right? You're ordering feed, you're making it on a fairly custom basis for people, and they just say, I want this and this and this. You may just keep them on hand to put in special custom formulas because a farm has asked for it or a nutritionist has asked for it. And some of them are sold directly to farmers and they add them on farm as they're mixing their feed. Many types of additives, and in the earlier slides, I think you saw an even longer list. I'm not even going to read these all to you. The idea of putting them all up is just to give the impression this is a very broad and diverse class. I'll talk just a tad bit more about these. I think the others are all pretty self-explanatory. We have the biotics. We hear about them a lot. And now there's prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. And I've heard others come up with in terms of marketing that do have definitions. But the big ones is, right, we have prebiotics. And what you're trying to do there is help beneficial bacteria and microbes grow and do their job. Probiotics are actually putting beneficial bacteria or yeast into the animal and having them add to the good work that the native bugs are doing. And now the last few years we've talked about postbiotics. And so here you're taking either non-living microbes, so they could be yeast, they could be bacteria, you know, they could be fungi, and or their products. You know, you grew them in a medium, and you take that medium and it has a lot of goodies in there that when you feed it to the animal are beneficial to either the resident microbes in its digestive tract or to the host animal itself. So we have those three classes of products. Enzymes is a big class on its own. We're trying to supplement the native enzymes in the animal, and there are specific products for helping with different structural nutrient compounds, and they have both direct and indirect action. In monogastrics, one target is to encourage lower gut fermentation of fiber. We may be just trying to break down physical barriers. Say an enzyme helps break down the seed coat, and that makes it so the digestive process, especially in a rumen, the microbes can get into the goodies that are inside there, and the animal can get more good out of it. Historically, there's been a lot of talk about breaking down gels. I'm not sure how big a deal that truly is. And then there are some enzymes that degrade specific mycotoxins. Phytogenics is a really broad class, and it takes some effort to keep up with what's going on. And what happens, people will sometimes lump them all together to talk about them, and I don't think that gives individual products a fair shot. We may be talking about plant extracts, various botanicals, sometimes the term essential oils, functional oils. Is a wide range, and the compounds in them are biologically active. I don't think there's any question anymore about that. And they can have both sensory and metabolic modes of action. I mean, sure, they may just smell or taste good and encourage intake, but there's much more that goes on with many of these compounds. Shouldn't be surprising if you think how long some of these plants have been used, you know, in human medicine, thousands of years. They're often sold as blends. I threw up a couple examples there, but the list goes on and on and on. And honestly, to meet a specific need, you need to find a company that can help you match the right product to what you're trying to accomplish. Touch just a bit on methyl donors. Again, some compounds that have many, many, many impacts in an animal. And the ones we typically feed the most often are methionine and choline, occasionally betaine. These are all related, but they're not fully interchangeable. So you want to understand that before you start, you know, deciding what you're going to offer. And you know, that's typically the nutritionist job, but we know we can impact all these things, and therefore you're going to have nutritionists, you're going to have educated producers looking for these products added to their feed. We've also got medicated additives. You know, that just I look at all the places that the people are represented on this call. Some of us can sell some of them, some of us can sell others. I'm just going to say know your options and know the regulations. So to kind of wrap up, a little more on what additives can do more specifically, right? We can improve the available nutrient supply to the animal. It may be because there's simply a form of, say, a mineral that is more bioavailable to the animal than, say, a sulfate. In ruminants, it may help support what those bugs are doing in a rumen, and that increases digestion. Either way, we are improving the nutrient supply and eventually supporting greater performance. Efficiency often accompanies that because if they eat more, we've already met maintenance requirements. So almost all that additional intake is going to go for performance. So we improve efficiency. We also improve efficiency again with better digestion, reduced use of nutrients for maintenance. So there we're coming back into those stress issues. Keep them comfortable, keep them happy. They don't have to take care of themselves so much. They can grow more, make more milk or eggs. And then better nutrient absorption, taking care of that gut integrity. We increase digestibility and enhance feed intake. Do these things with a variety of products. But again, it's understanding that mode of action. So especially if we're combining additives, we can do that more effectively. We want them to work together, not duplicate or work against each other. And sometimes we actually want to restrict intake on some self-fed supplements. A big thing now I mentioned before is impacting the gastrointestinal tract, the gut, and the health and function of that lining, the enterocytes there of the intestine in particular. Making sure that there aren't undesirable or even pathogenic microbes setting up housekeeping there. I mean, they're there, but we don't want a lot of them. We want to discourage them. And we want to reduce barriers to digestion and absorption. And so, here's some, again, mode of actions that help us accomplish those goals. And additives are going to be positioned to do so. Enhancing health. At least here in the US, we don't talk about these non-medicated products preventing, curing a disease, but we do know they enhance health. And here in the white box, a number of modes of action that different types of additives can do, and therefore support immune function, support stress response, modulate inflammation, all very important. Mycotoxins in particular get a lot of attention, and there are additives that utilize at least 3 different types of responses to that. Again, those MOAs to help the animal deal with those challenges. We're going to get those toxins, bind them to an adsorbent, send them out of the animal before they cause a problem, or use enzymes, or just help the animal support systems. The last 2 kind of off to this, a different direction, but again, bringing value. We can impact products due to the additives we feed. They can impact flavor, they can impact shelf life, and they can actually change the nutrient composition of those end products from a human nutrition standpoint. We can manage waste products. This kind of goes back to the sustainability, so that we have less methane, less ammonia, fewer pathogens shed, improved poultry litter quality, lots of benefits in all of those things. And we can maintain feed quality, things that minimize spoilage and loss, through the entire process until it gets up to the animal. So we have all this information. Farmer has many, many options and things to consider. So at that level, what are the questions that matter? Well, certainly, response, and this isn't just to additives. This is to any feeding decision. You know, what's in the feed, what to feed, how to feed it. What kind of response should I expect? And how big of a response at my farm under my conditions? And then what would be the economic returns on that? And lots of times the number that's thrown around is it ought to be at least 2 to 1. This is, we're dealing with animals in nature and things aren't as precise. So we want at least that much of a, expected ROI. Think too about what is it costing you if you're not using a technology that's available. Research, how much and the quality and how well it applies to a certain situation. Records, we've got all these nice little R words here. But can a response be quantified on your farm? If you buy it and try it, can you tell if it made a difference? And then it just needs to be realistic. Can you practically deliver it within the type of feed that's used on a given operation? Is it compatible with your other feeds, expected conditions? And how much do the animals need to eat? Do they need to eat it in a certain pattern, certain frequency? Does that fit current management? And then finally, we get back to this people thing. What other value is provided? Professional support, and then do those people help with data tools, management tools, any kind of on-farm services? If you are a business, you're looking for an ingredient supplier, can your supplier help you then as the sales company with marketing support, sales support, and then industry involvement? So that's what I wanted to go through today. I hope I hit on some things that y'all are interested with. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That was a very informative presentation. I really enjoyed listening to it. At this point, I'd like to see if anyone has any questions. Again, please put any of your questions in the chat, particularly those for Kathy. We'd like to take care of right away. Kathy, I have a question for you to get us started here.
Sure.
You mentioned the many uses of additives. How have you seen U.S. producers use some of these effectively? Maybe you have an example to share of how it's supported an operation.
So, they're so diverse.
Yeah.
Maybe a fairly, maybe more recent, because I do deal primarily in the ruminant space. We have not historically paid a lot of attention to mycotoxins, thinking, oh, well, the bacteria take care of them. Well, they don't really. And so as people have come to realize and recognize that, then to reach out and say, oh, there are products that perhaps are actually being used more abroad than they have been here historically, that can really address those specific problems. Also, people looking to market a certain way, right? I talk about story food a lot. If you have a way to market your animals, you've made that commitment that you're going to sell them as into a branded program. They're natural, or a branded meat or egg product. Being able to find an additive that fits those qualifications, right? So that it's not medicated or it's not non-organic. So those are a couple examples where, again, you're trying to find a tool for a specific need or issue.
Thank you so much, Kathy. All right, we have a question coming in from a representative from Turkey. Thanks for sending it. Kathy, he's wondering how you see the import taxes against China impacting U.S. feed manufacturers. He says most of the APIs and amino acids, vitamins are being manufactured in the Far East. Do you think this is going to increase the feeding costs of the U.S. feed manufacturers?
Okay, so as an organizing group, we had decided here several weeks ago that because this is not any of our areas of expertise, we're not going to go into depth on discussing trade and tariffs today. But I think your last question is simple enough. Yeah, I mean, if their costs go up, then their cost of doing business has gone up, and we'll just have to see how that pans out.
Thanks, Kathy. Reminder, please put any questions in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Kathy, I have one more question for you as we wait to see if there's anything else. There's been a significant increase in the aquaculture industry over the last several years. How have you seen U.S. feed ingredient companies develop alongside the growth of that aquaculture industry?
So that's not an area I work in closely. I've worked for 2 companies that did, make steps into that area, recognizing the growth and also the fact that the research curve has jumped up there, right? Again, as an industry grows, people start investing more in it. So there are, nutritional additives and functional additives that are available that, wouldn't have been in the not so distant past. And so that is a growing market area.
Thanks, Kathy, for that. I don't see any further questions for you, Kathy. Oh, I think we just got one more. Do you see U.S. feed additive companies willing to register their products in the EU?
I think most companies certainly have interest. Those that have already made a decision to work with our host here certainly have that interest. It's just a matter of, and I wouldn't limit it to EU because I think every market has its own challenges, especially if you haven't been active doing that. And that's one of the things that the feed export people bring to this whole process. If it seems daunting, if they don't understand how to minimize the cost or even estimate the cost or time to get that done, knowing that they've got a resource, I think helps move that forward. So if you don't see things coming to the EU right away, I don't think it's necessarily a lack of desire. It's either, a bit of a holdup because people are feeling overwhelmed, or it's being discussed and it's being pursued, but it's just a timely process.
Thanks, Kathy. I would add here that the AFIA, the American Feed Industry Association, can certainly be helpful with any regulatory issues that come up. Food Export also has a consultant that can help with regulatory issues. So any U.S. suppliers that are you're working with that need extra support, we can offer very subsidized advice to them as they go through this process. So just know that resources are out there if you're working with a new product to the European market. Kathy, I don't see any further questions come in. I know you need to jump off, so I just want to thank you on behalf of Food Export and our audience here for your presentation. If anyone has any additional questions for Kathy, please route those through Jens. He can certainly help with any follow-up.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer by email, something that you think of later.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Are there any other questions for Jens or I about the topics we covered today?
I'm going to jump off. Thanks again for everybody's time and attention.
Absolutely. Jens, I wanted to pose a question for you. We have this trade mission coming up to Bulgaria next year. If our audience is interested in participating, what are their next steps?
So next steps would be just basically send an email over to me. Let me know that you're interested, and then I will send you all the details about exact time frame, what we are planning, maybe a first glimpse at potential US companies coming over, and then we can basically take it from there. But yeah, first step, just reach out to me and I will follow up with you with more information.
Thanks, Jens. That seems to be the answer to a lot. Follow up with Jens if there's any questions. It's our go-to. Are there any other questions from the audience here? All right. With that, I'm going to wrap up the webinar today. As I mentioned, please do follow up via email if you have any additional questions. You can also follow Food Export in a variety of ways. You can check out our website or follow us on social media. We'd love to stay in touch with you, whether it's attending our trade mission to Bulgaria next year or in other ways. Thank you so much for joining today. We hope you found the presentation informative, and I wish you all a good day, good evening, wherever you are.